from Kurtco Media.
This is Cars That Matter.
This is Robert Ross with Cars That Matter. And ordinarily, we'd be broadcasting from Kurtco's Malibu studios, but we have a very special opportunity to be in a great place this morning in Santa Helena at beautiful Meadowood, Napa Valley. I'm here with two friends whom I've known for a long, long time. H. William Harlan, known too as friends as Bill Harlan, and Bruce Meyer, whom I see a little more often down in Los Angeles. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Robert.
You know, just to put a little background on it, because I know they're both very modest. Bill Harlan, of course, is known in the wine world for his Harlan Estate, Promontory, and Bond, and among smaller members only wine growing estate called the Napa Valley Reserve, where we're sitting right now. And Bruce, of course, is a Los Angeles celebrity in the car world and elsewhere. Certainly was a founding board member of the Peterson Automotive Museum, founder of the Checkered Flag 200, and Bonneville record holder, and all around car guy. And what kind of brings you guys together up here is an annual event that you both co-host called the Legends of Motorsport at the Napa Valley Reserve. And what a lot of fun that's been to watch some of these great cars. You know, it's funny, I was taking a little hike yesterday around the Meadowood property. We've got a beautiful hiking trail here. And as I was going up on the hill, I realized that you and your friends were all taking off for a day's rally. And I basically just froze and watched a parade of incredible cars leave the property and tried to kind of imagine what each and every one of them was. I know you were taking the lead, Bill, in a beautiful Bentley. Tell us a little about that. Speed 6, right?
Yes, it was. Bruce put me in the front because I'm from the area and I probably wouldn't get as lost as fast as
okay, okay.
So I lasted there for a while anyway.
No, nobody passes Bill.
Yeah, there we go. Boy, that's quite a car. I mean, just the quintessential, green flying bee, huh?
My theory is about cars. If you could get out of your car and walk away without turning around and looking at it, you've got the wrong car.
Boy.
And so over the years, I love my cars. I never had too many of them, but the one I was driving, I tended to have a reason to like it.
That's fantastic.
And so over these years, there was one that was missing, and I talked with Bruce about it here and there. And we were at an auction about 5 or 6 years ago, and one came up, and I couldn't quite get to be willing to pay for it, what they wanted for it. Then I was with Bruce at an auction a few years ago. With another friend of Bruce's, a fellow by the name Bruce Canepa. I was sitting between those two guys before the auction was
that's
over.
a dangerous pair to be sandwiched between because they both have about as much experience, and it's like the cartoons where there's a little devil on each shoulder, telling you what to do. Imagine it was just like that,
perfectly
huh?
Right, Robert.
Yeah.
So I ended up with this car.
Fantastic.
But now that I have it, I like it even better than I thought I would, and so it was a great day yesterday.
Isn't that great? That's fantastic. I know you got an old Bentley too, a 4.5, is that right?
Yep.
That's a special car. But you were not driving that yesterday.
Well, no. I was driving a little Alpha, which, it's a neat little car.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than the rear end of that Alpha. That the little cam tail.
That's right.
Beautiful, beautiful flat black and the tail lights. And what a great car. I saw it. I didn't realize that was your car.
That is an enthusiast car, but it's really a connoisseur's car.
Yes, it is.
It's not high horsepower. It's like 1,300 pounds,
Yep.
1,600 cc's.
Yep.
But they called them baby GTOs, and it's an acquired taste driving it, and it's the visuals. You have to know what you're looking at.
Oh man, I knew what I was looking at. It looked fantastic.
And you would understand that, Robert.
It's just like being inside a coffee can filled with rocks. There's nothing makes more racket because it's really just literally a little body shell on a frame, and that's about it.
Well, thank you for recognizing.
What a great car.
Because I had it up here. I think, well, this would be kind of a cool thing. I don't think anybody here had any clue what that car was.
I did.
Yeah, Bill, of course. course.
Bill's a connoisseur, and he likes odd machines too.
Tell me about that. Tell us about your car, Robert.
No, my cars are.
Tell us just for a minute. You got to tell us about yours.
A rounding error in the scheme of things. I love old cars. Really, to me, great new cars are great, but old cars are a whole lot more fun. Maybe that's why I've gravitated toward you guys and all the guys and gals that like to collect the old ones. The old Italians are great. I've got an old Lamborghini that
just an old Lamborghini.
You grow up. I'm convinced that when we're young, when we're in our teens, we kind of get, it's almost like a bird imprinting. By the way, I think I hear a woodpecker or a duck or something out there. Where you can't do that in the Malibu studios, Bill. You imprint early, and what you see when you're 12 or 13 years old kind of sticks with you for life. And that's what makes cars such incredible points of reference as we go through life. We look back and we say, man, when I was 15 years old, I was in love, and her name was this, and the car was named this. And all of those things continue to resonate for decades and decades and decades. Yeah. And that's what makes it so much fun.
And I think we grew up in exactly the right.
You guys were were in the golden age.
And we grew up in the 40s, so we had hot rods.
Yeah.
Which were just dream machines.
Boy, there were a couple I saw yesterday, some 32 Fords that were just drop dead gorgeous.
100%. And so we enjoyed hot rodding. We enjoyed the birth of drag racing, which was last night with the Snake. We kind of got into motorcycles when they were safer.
That's right, because there weren't as many crazy people on the road.
And there weren't so many people texting and driving.
That's right. And you had to kick them to start them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you just look at the time that we grew up.
And place.
That's right. Yeah. We had 12 months.
Of beautiful driving.
That's really a good point, Bill. Yeah. So, we were just, you couldn't plan a better car or motorcycle, period of time for Bill or myself.
And the good news too, and of course they were always expensive, always out of reach a little bit, but the good news is that back in the 60s, even kind of in the early 70s, these were just old used cars. And that made it great too. They weren't these precious, 10, 20, $30 million artifacts. You could actually buy a 275 GT Beef and drive it. And if I'm not mistaken, that may be another point of correspondence between you guys. Am I right?
You're right, but I wanted to just step back because you were talking about affordability, because both Bill and I, when we started focusing on maybe exotic sports cars like a Gullwing was $4,000 or $5,000.
I know it.
Today, the radio upgrade is $4,000 or $5,000. So you could buy a 40 Ford for $50. You could buy for nothing.
Yeah.
And if you had a paper corner, you could afford, the kind of stuff that we had.
That's right.
For sure. I would say between the time I was 16 and the time I was 18, I had 5 cars that I paid less than $100 for.
Isn't that amazing?
And then stepped up to $150 for a car. But we could work on them. We could custom. We could do anything we wanted to. We could paint them. We could change the engine. We could do anything. We spent half our life at the junkyard finding stuff. But you got to remember, when we grew up, cars were still relatively new. I say we were born in 40, 41. When our parents, say here we are, 80 years later, but say even 40 years before we were born, there weren't any cars. It was all horse and buggy.
That's right.
And we listened to our parents talking about those days, and now we have cars, and it seemed like having that perspective that time, you didn't have the perspective like you do today. Today, if you've got a car that's 40 years old, or 50 or 60 or 70 years old, it's not that big a deal. But in those days, there weren't any cars any older than 30 years old.
That's right.
So it was just a
Ferrari wasn't even a
world.
Company when you guys were born. They didn't start till 1947 or whatnot. And
Porsche too.
And Porsche too, same thing. You're right. These were just, you actually got to grow up with these companies emerging, into the automotive landscape. Yeah. Exciting times. Well, obviously you've had some $100 cars, Bill, but if I had to kind of ask both of you, your first real car, what was the first real car you bought? And then let's start at the beginning and kind of work down the road.
Well, it's an easy one for me.
What was that?
So, and I just, just looking at Bill and kind of thinking back, Bill grew up with a father that enjoyed what his sons were doing, and Bill and his brothers were, gearheads, and they flew planes and drove cars and motorcycles. It was like a real, you could do a sitcom on the Harlans,
That's
and it was
great.
just all cool.
That's great.
In my particular case, my parents, it's not like Bill had money; they had enthusiasm, and my family had no interest. This was like the biggest waste of time in the world are cars and motorcycles and even bicycles. I mean, I was the last to have a bicycle. I mean, just anything that had anything to do with mobility or a waste of time. Anything you were doing other than work was like a waste of time.
Wow.
And that's just the way it was. And so my father said he would help me buy my first car if I had saved up, a fair amount of money, because I did have a paper corner and a couple gardening jobs.
Sure.
And we were just taught never to spend, just save your money, that kind of thing. So I was prepared to have a 40 Ford. And again, it was $100 deal. It was nothing. My parents that was not even an option. So my dad said he'd help me with my first car. So my first car was in 1960, and my great aunt, by the way, died and left me and my sister her 50 Plymouth. That was really it wasn't titled with me, but that was the first car that I kind of had some input in. But so I ordered a Chevy Biscayne, just some like the cheap model Chevy in '60 with the big motor
with a big 409.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then I discovered Porsche, and I looked, and I could buy a Porsche for $2,700. And so I went back to my dad. I said, you know what? I'm not going to do the Chevy thing. I'm going to buy this little car with 70 horsepower. And it's an economy car. He'd never heard of a Porsche, but
Right.
This sounded like I was going in the right direction.
Of course. I love it.
That's the first car that resonated with me. So I bought a Porsche in 1960 from John von Neumann in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It was a 61 Porsche. I took delivery in May of 61.
Fantastic.
And that really started me with Porsche. I've loved Porsches. I've driven Porsches since 1961.
Isn't that great?
So that's
great?
that's the car that kind of resonates
Fantastic.
with me.
Well,
I don't think Bill has ever even had a
Porsche.
Porsche.
No, I was when Bruce showed up at school with a Porsche. It was like a foreign car. I mean, Bruce lived on one side of L.A. I lived on the other side of L.A. So our world's a little different, as far as being knowledgeable about possibilities.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was the car was unique, Bruce was unique, and you run into someone new into town, and they got something that's interesting. That's kind of where it all began. But as far as for me, the first car was a 37 Hudson. That was actually a pretty neat car, but it was pretty fast.
Straight six with.
Yes, it was that was an 8-cylinder car.
Oh, an 8. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a 4-door, running boards. It had curtains that came down in the back. It was kind of a neat thing. I paid $35 for that car.
I love it.
And then the next car that was kind of a cool car was a 41 Ford convertible. And that was the $150 car. But it was really a cool car.
Fantastic.
But by the time I got to 17, 18 years old, I ended up with a 57 Buick. And a 57 Buick that it was a stick shift. I mean, very few Buicks that had a standard transmission in them and had the big engine in it, but it was a light car. I think they made them mostly for the police department at that time.
Buick with a standard transmission sounds like a great car. How long did that last, Bill?
Well, maybe I'll back up one from there. After the 51, the 41 Ford, I got a 51 Oldsmobile. And it was a convertible also. As soon as you get your car at that time, you head across the border at Tijuana and get tuck and roll upholstery.
That's right, tuck and roll, yeah.
And I had that thing lowered pretty much to the ground. I painted it purple. It was the first car that you see in those days.
You were an early adopter of what became a complete East LA phenomenon later
Well, yeah,
on.
he was East. That's right, because he was in Whittier.
Okay. Well, that explains it all.
Yeah, so I said I lived on the other side of LA.
You were a tastemaker. You were a tastemaker.
Well, I'm not sure it was taste, but we were having some fun.
Did you have the name, like a song title on the
We
back?
did have names for our cars, but
Painted on? Dreamboat or...
that car was the Purple Passion, I have to admit.
You know,
This is good.
You can't pay
I'm not
for
sure we
it.
ever admit that one.
You
But
can't make this stuff up. That's
but
fantastic.
that car got totaled. Then I got the '57 Buick.
How
and
did
that-
it get totaled, just out of curiosity?
I actually, there were 8 of us in the car, and everyone was trying to work the electric windows on it, and we mowed right through a telephone pole, broke it off at the base. That car's a pretty heavy car.
Good heavens.
It drove right straight.
Were you driving?
I was driving, yeah.
You did a good job driving.
Well,
Everybody
it was on the
survived.
telephone poles on the opposite side of the street, so you could tell how far off I was. Anyway, lost that car, the 57 Buick, lost it in a different kind of situation. The theory in those days was the shortest period of time you're in an intersection, the less chance you have of being in an accident.
So get through that intersection as
Get through the
quickly as
intersection as
possible.
fast.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
It was an intersection where there were no stop signs either way.
Okay.
And so one night, both of us kind of came in the intersection about the same time.
Yeah, that'll happen.
So that was the end of the Buick. Then that was really from there on, it was motorcycles. That's about all I could afford after
Okay.
a few of those. And
Well, you
the
definitely.
Ranchero. Anyway, so we had a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And then kind of catapulting into the mid '60s and so forth. Did you got serious with some funny foreign
Well,
stuff?
there's another connection between
Yes.
Bill and myself there,
Do tell.
too. So when I was at Berkeley, I was a bartender at a place called the Rathskeller.
Really?
And it was the place to be.
Okay.
And Bill would come down, Larry Blake, who owned the place, loved any Cal athletes, and he encouraged us to buy beers for the Cal athletes. Of course, Bill was a Cal athlete, so I rightfully took care of Bill. I don't think he ever bought a beer there. But
Wasn't so bad.
yeah.
Sounds like the place to
But
be.
after
Helps you know the
graduating, I
bartender.
went up to Lake Tahoe to be kind of a bartender waiter at this place called the Forest Inn. And at Lake Tahoe still is a place called the Sierra Tahoe Boat Company, and they specialize in classic wooden boats.
Oh boy.
And I mean I had my little Porsche up there, and I would go over there and just
Boy, they fall in love with those. Yeah.
just
yeah.
drool over
Drool
there.
worthy, aren't
Oh
they?
my God. And it was a fellow named Dick Clark who ran it, and the guy that owned it at the time was a fellow named Moreland Weissel. And Moreland had a gull wing, and evidently had some engine problems with it, and took the gull wing engine out and put in a 327 Chevy engine.
Which was common practice back then.
Oh, I mean, it's interesting, just to divert completely, and we can have this conversation another time, but it's the small block
hold you to it.
Chevy has saved more
It has.
cars.
It absolutely has.
And that's a whole nother
That's
conversation.
right. If it weren't for a small block, so many of these cars would have been just sent to the
they'd all be gone.
sent to the yard.
They're sent to the yard.
Because-
So this fella, so he put in the Chevy engine in it. And I remember walking through the boathouse, and I saw this gull wing, Rudge wheels, factory
yeah.
Rudge wheels.
Oh.
And I'd always, a gull wing was like the first supercar.
It
I mean,
was. It
come
was.
on. I mean, it
It's
was
still a supercar. It's really the
Totally.
first, kind of a lot of ways, the first modern car that you can still drive today.
100%. So I look and I see this car sitting there, and at the time it had a reverse trigger on it, And I mean, I knew what that was. I knew it had an American engine in it. So I went right away to the office and talked to Dick Clark. I said, does that gull wing have a Chevy engine in it? He goes, yeah. And I go, oh my God, the perfect combination.
Yep.
No foreign. 'cause
Exotic car with a motor that won't break.
that's right.
Go
So
down
I
to
thought,
Pep Boys and buy a set of plugs, and
and
you're
by
out
the
the
way,
door
people
for
call them
$10.
foreign cars, meaning like nobody
Right.
can work on them.
Right.
And they were foreign, okay?
And boy, nobody could work on one of those. Fuel injection goes out on one of those things,
Yeah.
and you had to be a master watchmaker to fix it.
So I just thought, this may be the coolest car I've ever seen in my life. So I literally I sold my Porsche at Lake Tahoe. I took every penny I made for the whole summer, and I bought this car. And I drove it home. I had it for about a year. And I used to just wait for Cobras to come by, because this thing would just take a Cobra. I mean, it was so fast.
Yeah.
And I would take my friends for rides in this thing, and they would just scream for me to stop, you know. It was really fast. And I drove it up to Berkeley for a football game or something from down in L.A. And the guy that owned the Triumph shop, I forget his name.
Tony Metz.
Tony Metz.
He's my sponsor.
Wow.
Oh, he sponsored you in
He's
racing.
my sponsor for racing the bikes.
So Tony
early
bought the
days.
car from me and sold it to Bill. And Bill, now here's the best part. On the rally yesterday, did you see a black Gullwing?
I sure did.
That's the car.
The black one with the Rudge wheels.
The black one with the Rudge wheels, that has a Chevy engine in it, and Bill has that car. He's had that car, what, 55 years probably?
54 years.
That's amazing. People.
So
don't-
Bill, the other thing about Bill, he doesn't sell stuff.
I love it.
He's very particular on what he buys, and then he just doesn't sell it. I mean, he has an Allard, which we'll get to in a moment, but I mean,
A2?
J2.
J2, sorry. Yeah.
Which
J2.
is maybe it could be
J2.
the world's most original Allard, and I'm sure Bill will talk about that. But I mean, he's enjoyed that car from the first historics to the Millie and everything else. Bill scared a lot of people with that Allard,
Fantastic.
spectators and passengers.
Cadillac V8?
Cadillac V8, yeah.
Still with a 3-speed.
Fantastic.
Still
That's
the
right.
original paint, and he raced it forever with the original tires.
Well, we had to get new tires every so often, but they started out with the original tires. In those days, we drove the cars to the races, raced them, and drove them home.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, back to the Gullwing. I'll be telling you a little more on that. When I first went from Southern California to Northern California, one of the fellows in the fraternity house, a wealthy kid, lived down in Woodside. And so we were down there for a Stanford game. And I had that 57 Buick. Well, we ran out of gas. And this fellow called his father, because we were not too far from where his father lived. And he showed up in a Gullwing with a 5-gallon gas can in the back of it, probably behind the seat. And it wasn't his car, it was a friend of his car. And when I saw that car, I said, someday I've got to have a Gullwing. So this was like, say, 6 years before Bruce ended up with that Gullwing that he had, that he sold to the fellow that owned a motorcycle shop that was my sponsor in those days.
What an incredible 6 points of separation, and how the seed was planted early.
Yes. And so anyway, I ended up with with that car that Bruce had, that I've had now for 54 years. I went to it, it looked totally stock except for the shifting the shifting lever, but it didn't have the fitted luggage that the Gullwings had. So I wanted to get fitted luggage for it. So I opened the paper in the morning to see if any Gullwing could be for sale. One day, one came up, so I went out with my brother. Got there first in the morning, looked at the car, tried to talk him out of the fitted luggage. And then this car was perfect, had 1,600 miles on it, brand new, like a brand new car. And so the guy wouldn't sell me the fitted luggage without the car. Well, I didn't have enough money to buy the car. My brother was with me, and he was very, very conservative. And so he was already married and had a couple of kids. I was still single, but he saved everything. So I talked him into lending me the money to buy that car. So now I have two of them, and they're painted the exact same color. You couldn't tell them apart. And so it came down to, I had to sell one of them because I couldn't afford both. I had to pay my brother back. So I decided I'd keep the one with the Chevy engine, because then the brand new one that we bought with the fitted luggage, totally original. So I sold it. I paid actually around.
I'm going to start crying.
Around $3,500, I think I paid for that car.
Well, it was.
And
it was a lot of money then.
I sold it a year later, like for $4,000 or something. Like made a little bit of money, but I kept the luggage.
Fantastic.
And
What you
so-
wanted in the first place.
Which I wanted in the first place, and the car was so much faster, so much more fun. I still have it, and even though, you know, the original car would be worth more money, there's still this car is, first of all, it's like a friend.
That's right.
I mean, I think about the old days and talk about our parents that maybe had a horse and buggy before their car. You think of your car almost as well as they probably thought about their horse.
That's right.
It's just, it really is a friend. So
They
after
do become
54
that.
years, you don't want to give it up. There were a lot of years when I only lived on boats and things. I had no place to put it. I'd leave it with my parents. So it's one thing I've been able to keep through all my assets. It's the one that I've owned the longest. So
I think that's
Bruce was the instigator on that.
That's incredible. What a way to point to connect all the dots, and to be able to have held on to something that long really does say something about commitment and passion. Talk about a car that matters.
Yeah.
I know that if we just hop over the Alps and go down to Italy, there may be some Italian machines that kind of resonate with the both of you guys. And am I mistaken? Was there a 275 GTB story that you guys could share?
It's a great story.
Let me tell a story before that, though. The second car that I ever saw from the Gullwing that I said someday if I could ever afford it
Yeah.
was a 275 GTB. And it was
Give you no argument there.
It was a yellow one. It was owned by this Dr. Sonderrigger. He lived in Reno, but he had a place up at Tahoe. I saw that car. I mean, it was just absolutely fantastic. And about 3 years later, I was able to buy one, but it was red. So I kept it for a few years, and it was 1965, I guess. And it had
First year, yeah.
The drive shaft was always getting out of balance.
Right.
And I couldn't afford to keep it going, to own the car and also keep it, but drive shaft and balance and everything else. So I ended up selling it. And because really what I wanted was a yellow one. And so I sold
yellow.
it. Yeah, fly yellow, that's right. So I sold it at about 1971, I'd say, 70 or 71. So that's the story on me, selling the red one to get a yellow one, but I never could quite afford all the other things I wanted to keep my life going until one day I called Bruce.
So this is like a divine story, okay? As in, you know, the big boy upstairs, divine. I got a call from a Beverly Hills policeman. And I think I know every garage in Beverly Hills. And he said, Bruce, there's a lady, her husband died 11 years ago. She has a Ferrari in the garage. And she wants to sell it, but she just doesn't know what it's worth or how to go about it. So I said, I'm not a dealer. I really can't, I'm not sure I'm the right guy. And I'm thinking it's a car that I probably know nothing about. So he said, please just go and talk to her, and make nice and so on. I said, okay. I mean, I could walk to the house. It was, half a mile away. And I get to the house. The gal's name was Michelle Aranger.
Yes.
And so she moves her.
Before you go, I got a call from her not even a week ago, asking how her old car was.
Good heavens.
Oh, you're jumping ahead, so you're telling the end of the story.
My mom didn't want to forget. She says, you got to tell Bruce Meyer hello for me.
Oh. So this lady
That's
was
great.
so sweet. Her husband was an Austrian Olympian skier. And she had a funky motorhome. She moved out of the way of the garage. She opens up the garage, and the garage is full of litter and boxes, and there's this car covered. And she rolls back the cover, and you could have knocked me over with a feather. Here is a alloy-bodied 275 GTB, torque tube, 6 carburetor, outside gas cap.
Alloy.
All original paint, everything. And I'm going, oh my God, it was like the most beautiful thing I mean, just unbelievable. So, but in 1970, let me take a step back. So just to show how Bill and I parallel our tastes and our experience are, in 1967, I bought a Porsche in Beverly Hills from SD Zipper.
Sure.
And that was that's on Wilshire Boulevard.
Right at Maple Drive.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And they were a Porsche and Ferrari dealer.
They were.
And so
Lamborghini too later on.
And Lamborghini. Yeah. So I pulled in with my little Porsche, and here is a fellow named Bill Doheny, who was Doheny Drive, Greystone Estate. I mean, like one of the major movers in LA. And he had a fly yellow GTB 4 cam. I'm guessing it was like when my son saw his first Countach or something. I mean, it was like, it just stopped me in my tracks. That was the most beautiful car I'd ever seen in my life, ever. And so, of course, I said to the service writer, if that car ever comes available, you got to let this gentleman know. I would love to own that car. Now, I didn't know if it was a $3,000 car or a $30,000 car. So 2 years later, in like 1970, I get the call, do you want to buy the car? And I'm going, oh my God, it was $10,750.
Wow.
Again, net worth time.
Yep.
So I unloaded and I bought this car.
I think they were about 15 grand new, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a fellow, Jerry Siemens, who lives up in Tahoe now, and he was head of a company called Southwest Leasing. And on the side, Southwest would buy exotic cars. So I said, I found this car I absolutely love, way too much money. $10,750 is too much money. Well, of course, I had already decided this was the car because I'd seen, it was the first car I'd seen. It had 12,000 miles on it, fly yellow. And I would pay too much, which is what I've done for almost every car I bought. And I buy this car.
You can never pay too much. You can only buy too soon.
That isn't always the case, but that's what people say. So anyway, so I have this car, and it belonged to Bill Doheny, and I'll get to this in a second. So Michelle, I'm going, Michelle, I mean, tell me, what is the story in this car? She said, my husband bought this car from Chris Cord. He and his wife, Katrina, went on their honeymoon in this car in 1966. They bought it brand new, picked it up at the factory, drove it, brought it back to the U.S. and sold it to my husband in 1966.
Wow.
I'm going, oh my gosh. And it's been sitting here my husband died like 11 years ago. It's been sitting here, and I think it's just time that it needs to go. And can you help me sell it? And I said, Michelle, I don't have any idea what the value of this car is, because I really didn't. I'm alloy body, outside gas cap.
Yeah,
I think they made 2 or 3 of them.
That was an outlier for sure.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And so I gave her the name of a few brokers, that were reliable brokers. And I said, here's what I would do. I would start and show them, if I were like of the type, I could have probably said, I need to own this car. I put her in my car. I drove her to my house, which was like a walk away, and I showed her Bill Doheny's car, which was the twin to this car.
Yeah.
And not to get like too overly done in details, but Chris Cord's father died when he was an infant. Chris Cord's mother married Bill Doheny. So Bill Doheny was Chris Cord's father. He always referred to Bill Doheny as his father. So now I showed her Chris Cord's father's car, basically, and it was a twin.
That's amazing.
So fast forward like 6 months or so, and I get a call from Michelle. It was like on a Wednesday night, and she said, Bruce, I've decided to sell the car. I've decided on the price, but I just don't like the guy. I just don't get a good feeling about the guy. I said, well, no, this is Wednesday. I said, why don't you just think it over and let me think about it. By the way, as soon as I heard about the car, I went right to Chris Cord. I said, Chris, opportunity time. You need to buy this car. This was a car, and he's still married to Katrina, 55 years or however many.
Wow.
And you have to buy the car. Chris says, well, I don't know if I really want, no, I'm not interested. So I just left it at that. So like on Wednesday, I get a call from Bill. And he said, I'm turning, I don't know, what was it, 60?
60.
I'm turning 60 on Saturday.
It was over 19 years ago.
And I want to buy myself a car. And Bill and I have always talked about cars. And, you know, he says, what do you think of this? And, you know, so we've always had conversations
Sure.
about cars. Or if something comes up that I think Bill ought to have,
Yeah.
you know, I have no problem.
Once again, the devil on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, Bill said, I said, what do you want? He said, I'd like to get a 275. I love a yellow one. And now I'm thinking he's messing with me. There's no way that the
he
same
could possibly
day,
know.
there's no way he would say, I want a 275, a yellow 275, when hours earlier, Michelle calls me and says that she's found a buyer for this car. Now I'm telling you, that's beyond coincidence. And I start messing with Bill because I'm thinking he knows something. There's no possible way he would just call me out of the blue. And it's not like we talk every day or every week or every month.
Right.
He just called me and said I said, Bill, and after querying him, I realized he had no idea.
He didn't know.
I said, okay, here's the deal. I said, you FedEx me tomorrow information on Meadowood about yourself. Just FedEx me anything you can about what your lifestyle, and I'm going to make your day. Well, tell me what. I said, just trust me. And I said, I want you to come down here on Friday. And
Friday was my birthday.
Yeah. And she had an offer for $195,000 for this car. And I said, Bill, come down here with $196,000. And
I think it was 200.
And $196,200, whatever it was. But was a little more than, and I called Michelle. I said, Michelle, I'm going to make your day. You're going to receive tomorrow information about a guy that is the absolute right owner for your car. And I gave her the whole, you know, I'm pretty good about talking about Bill. Because I'm a huge fan.
You're a master of ceremonies. You know how to introduce people.
So she said, oh, I'm so excited, Bruce. And we have a friend of ours, Chip Connor, who had a garage in LA. And I said to Chip, can I borrow your mechanic to come over? I want to bring some Marvel Mystery Oil and some plug wrenches and stuff.
See if she starts after
Ed
all
Brown,
these
the tow guy. You know Ed Brown.
Sure,
I said,
Ed. Everybody's best friend got him on speed dial.
That's right. We all do. So Friday, Bill flies down. He has no idea. He's just got to check with him. I have Ed Brown there and Marty, who is Chip's mechanic. Yeah. And we all converge at Michelle's. And to make a long story short, the engine, we brought a battery just to turn over, make sure it wasn't frozen, because it sat there for 11 years. And Bill buys the car. And of course, Bill still has it today. And he takes it right to, at that time, Phil Riley and Company. Mm-hmm. And has them go through it, make sure everything's perfect. And so the two of us have our twin 275s, long nose, 6 carburetors. I mean, you know, his is way rarer than mine. And it's just like one of those magical stories, you know, that just was meant to be.
What a fantastic
That's a long, I mean, I just taken half your show.
It's worth
isn't that amazing?
It's worth every syllable, every adjective. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
And it has the perfect owner. And so Michelle, who was a lovely lady, lonely. I mean, you know, just you know, she made a friend with me, made a friend with Bill. And so it's interesting. She called last week because she calls me. So somebody wanted to buy her house, the man next door. What do you think? Come up and you look at it. And, you know, so I kind of, along with that, you know, when she has a problem, she calls me.
Well, if she has any other garages with any other dusty old cars in them, give me a call. Let me see what I can do. What a great story,
Isn't that
Bruce.
fabulous?
That is
and so the car has a great owner.
Yeah.
It's basically
2 guys that don't sell their cars. I love it. And they're matching.
Even today, here we are, almost 20 years later. She comes up about every 4 or 5 years to see her car.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And she'll bring a lady friend of hers. She's really older than us by probably 5 or 6 years, 7 years. And she still loves that car, checks in on the phone every so often. And so it's just a wonderful experience. I mean, this whole thing with Bruce, with Michelle, with the car. I mean, just, it's a fate.
What a fantastic thing.
Isn't it perfect?
It really is. It couldn't be better.
And she's as happy as can be. And it's just one of those things.
Wow. Wow. And you've got your Beverly Hills taxi cab in fly yellow with
Well,
great quad pipes.
So a fellow named Peter Sachs, about 10 years ago probably, called and said, Bruce, they do these GTO reunions every 5 years. And so he said, you know, what do you think about doing a
Those
reunion?
aren't Pontiac GTOs. Those are 250
Oh,
GTOs.
yeah. No, these are Ferrari GTOs. This is a club. These are the big dogs.
Yeah.
And he said, what do you think about doing an event up, in the Napa Valley? I said, oh my gosh, this is perfect. And I know right who to call. So I called Bill, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing happens right here at Meta, where they had 23 GTOs.
Out of what, 37 were made or something like that?
Yeah,
30?
and these guys that have GTOs, I mean, God bless them, they consider themselves kind of the chosen few, okay? And so they don't like publicity. They don't want to contaminate their events with anything other than GTOs.
That's right.
And so the only way that I would get involved organizing this thing with my pal Bill is that both of us were included in the rally and the whole event.
Let a 275 or two in there.
Yeah. So our two yellow 275s hung with the GTOs. And we had a great rally, right? And we had the reunion right at Bill's resort at Meadowood, and maybe
that's a once in a lifetime gathering.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I don't think they've ever had so many together at one time. And maybe the most beautiful place on earth is Bond, the winery Bond.
That's right.
And we have pictures of the gathering at Bond. And Bond, by the way, is another one of Bill's enterprises. And we had our son's wedding reception there. I don't think there's a more beautiful place on earth. I really mean that. And one of Bill's great friends, who's world renowned, is a fellow named Howard Backen, who's an architect. Bill doesn't do anything without Howard Backen, and they did Bond, and those two are great friends, and Bill can talk about that. But the architecture, you've been to Bond, correct?
Yes, I have.
Can you imagine, you sit in that reception area and you see the parking out in front.
And you're looking down on $2.5 billion worth of Ferraris.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's only 20 cars.
That's right.
Not to crunch the numbers too quickly, but I can't resist.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Wow. A once in a lifetime opportunity.
See what Bruce brings to the end of the equation through all these years?
I guess so.
Life could be worse.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Does not suck, right?
Gentlemen, Bill Harlan and Bruce Meyer, I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been talking with you and hearing your stories and being able to share all these great stories about cars and friendship up in a place like Meadowood, Napa Valley. It's really idyllic and a very, very inspiring conversation.
Well, thank you, Robert. It's been fun for us. Can't think of a better person we love having up here.
Aww.
Thanks for coming and visiting us at least once a year for the last 15 or 17 years. I can't remember.
Boy, I guess friendships do kind of have a way of getting up there in age, don't they?
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Bruce, really and truly.
Robert, it's great being here with you, and of course, being here with Bill. We could just sit and chat for hours.
Yeah, we need a little more time and a couple of bottles to really get into this, but at least we've had a chance to scratch the surface.
Well, you're a great interviewer, a great friend, and you make it so easy. So it's just, the three of us could sit here for hours more just chatting about old times, and thanks for thinking of me.
Well, let's do it again soon, huh?
Look forward to it.
Me too.
That's great. It's Robert Ross with Cars That Matter up here at Meadowood, Napa Valley. Thank you. This episode of Cars That Matter was hosted by Robert Ross. Produced by Chris Porter. Sound engineering by Bill Curtis. Recording and mastering by Michael Kennedy. Theme song by Celeste and Eric Dick. Recorded at the Napa Valley Reserve. Additional music and sound by Chris Porter. Our guests today were Bill Harlan, Bruce Meyer, and Brett Anderson. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. I'm Robert Ross. Thanks for listening.
Kurt Cohn Media. Media for your mind.